All right, guys, so as I've mentioned, this is not a beginner PHP course. We're not going to be covering all the fundamentals. If you're very new to PHP, I would definitely suggest watching my YouTube PHP front to back series first before attempting this course. But I still do want to go through the setup. We're going to be using XAMPP, which I know a lot of you guys probably already have set up or have done it in the past, which just gives us basically an Apache server, PHP, and MySQL all on our local machine so that we have a nice development environment we can build and run PHP applications. All right, so to do this, we're going to go to apachefriends.org. This is completely cross-platform, so you can use it on Windows, Mac, or Linux. Although if you are on Linux, I would probably suggest using just a regular LAMP stack over something like XAMPP. All right, now I downloaded this right here, which is the latest version, which includes PHP version 7.1.9. I have that downloaded already, so I'm just going to go ahead and open that up and run it. All right, so you'll probably get this message if you're on Windows. It's just a warning about user access control. I've never had any issues with that, so you can just ignore that. All right, then we're just going to go through the installer. You can pick and choose what you want here, but you do definitely want, of course, PHP, MySQL, and PHP-MyAdmin. The other stuff is basically optional. Oh, Apache, of course, you need that as well. Tomcat, Mercury, you don't need that stuff, but I'm just going to keep it checked anyways. And then select the folder. The default directory is going to be in your C drive if you're on Windows, and I'm going to just click Next. All right, I'm going to uncheck this Bitnami thing right here and click Next. All right, so that's going to go ahead and set everything up for us. All right, guys, so that took about 2 or 3 minutes or so. Now, once you get to this screen, it's going to say, do you want to start the control panel now? I'm going to uncheck this, and I'll show you why in a second. So just uncheck that, click Finish, and then what we want to do is look for the XAMPP panel. So, I mean, we could just go down here and search for XAMPP, and then you want to run it as administrator. That's why I didn't want to run it then, because we want to run it as administrator. All right, now the reason that we want to do that, we'll just click Save right here. The reason we want to run it as administrator is because we want to install Apache and MySQL as a service that runs in the background. And if you don't run this panel as administrator, you won't have these options. So we're going to click both these red X's, and see it says click Yes to install the Apache service. We'll say yes. Turns to a green check mark, same thing with MySQL, and now we have those running as services in the background. All right, so let's go ahead and start these up. Okay, make sure that these now say stop. That means that these are started, okay? It should say successfully started down here. All right, you now have Apache and MySQL running, and you have PHP installed on your system. Okay, if you go to your local host, you should see the XAMPP dashboard. Now, to get to our server folder, we want to go to, if you're on Windows, your C drive and then XAMPP. If you're on Mac, you just want to find your XAMPP directory, or whatever you're using, if it's WAMP or if it's a LAMP stack. And then you just want to go to either your htdocs, your www folder if you're using a LAMP stack, and that'll be your server folder. All right, so just to test this out, let's go ahead and create a folder called test. And inside here, we'll create a new file, and we'll call this index.php. All right, and I'm just going to open this with Visual Studio Code. That's the text editor that I'll be using. And there is an extension that I would recommend if you're going to be using VS Code as well. But let's just test this out and just put in some PHP tags. We'll just say echo, and we'll say it works, and save. And then we should be able to go to localhost/test, and we get it works. All right, good. So we know that our PHP is being parsed. Now what we want to do is we want to add a password to the root user of our MySQL database. Now, if we go to localhost/phpMyAdmin, Okay, and if you're using XAMPP, this will be installed automatically. If not, I would suggest installing it as a standalone program. But we're going to go to, let's see, user accounts, and you'll see that the root user for localhost has no password. So what we want to do is click Edit Privileges. We want to click Change Password, and we want to add a password. I'm just going to do 1 through 6. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and click Go. That's going to add a password. Now, if we try to go somewhere else or reload the page, we're going to get an error. Now, we have to fix this by going into a config file that's going to be in your XAMPP folder in phpMyAdmin. And we want to go into config.inc.php, and we'll just go ahead and open that up. All right, and then you want to just go down to where it says this server's password and put in the password that you entered. All right, and save, and then we should be able to go back and reload, and now everything's okay. All right, so from now on, your user will be root, and your password will be whatever you added. All right, and of course, you can add more users here if you want, but we're just going to use the root user. All right, and that's absolutely fine when you're working on your local machine. When we deploy later on to a remote host, we'll have a different user and password and so on. So I think that's going to do it for our environment. Now, again, if you're using VS Code, which you don't have to, you can use whatever text editor you want. I would suggest installing an extension. So if we go down here to this icon, this extensions icon, I'm going to search for PHP. And there's an extension called PHP IntelliSense, and we're going to grab that. Okay, so that'll just add, drop downs and IntelliSense and hints that have to do with standard PHP code, and it's really helpful. And you can see it's quite popular. We have 815,000 downloads. So once it's done, you can just click reload window. All right, and that should be all set. Another extension that I'm going to install is Bracket. Let me just click in here. So it's called Bracket Pair Colorizer right here. So we're going to install this. And this just makes it so that if we have like nested if statements, the brackets on the same level will be the same color, and then nested control structures, nested if statements, and loops and stuff, they'll have different color brackets. And it's for curly braces, square brackets, and parentheses. So it's a really nice extension. Again, not needed, but I would suggest it if you're using Visual Studio Code. Okay, and of course, I would also suggest Emmet. Emmet is default in Visual Studio Code. If you're using Atom or Sublime Text or something like that, you'll have to install it separately, but I would look into that as well. That allows us to use really nice shortcuts for HTML and CSS. All right, guys, so I think our environment is all set. We have XAMPP set up, Apache and MySQL, they're both installed as a service, and we're ready to move on with the course.